Carlos Nelson with Cascade Media, and tonight we're going to be highlighting one of our urban professionals, and she's got a whole lot to say, Miss Stacey Knoell. And without further ado, welcome to the show, Stacey. Tell our audience a
Thanks for
little
having
bit.
me.
Tell our audience a little bit about yourself. I'm always saying go back to kindergarten. When I say about yourself, what schools you went to, some of your mentors, and where you're at in life, what you do professionally, and then talk about what you. There's a lot of information that you imparted to me off camera. Give our audience a little bit of some of the things that you think that we should be paying attention to as a community.
Yeah, well, go back to kindergarten. It's funny. I have seen you ask people this. So I'm like, all right, well, in kindergarten, I was in Iowa. I was born in Nebraska, raised in Iowa. My dad worked for Standard Oil. That's how long ago this was. It was still Standard Oil before it was Amoco and BP. And in kindergarten, I think I probably was still at the stage where I wanted to be a Dallas Cowboy cheerleader, if I'm honest with myself. And but I did grow out of that. I wound up my family did move back to Kansas City. They're mom and dad both from Kansas City, Kansas. So we moved to Kansas City when I was in high school, graduated from Sumner Academy, and then I went back to Iowa for the University of Iowa, got my bachelor's degree in art history, believe it or not. And then I moved to St. Louis, where eventually I got a degree in sign language and deaf communications and found a job working at Blue Springs South High School as a sign language interpreter. So that's what moved me back to the Kansas City metro areas. I was a sign language interpreter at Blue Springs South High School. I did that for a handful of years, and then I found out that, and I was kind of like the math class specialist. I interpreted all the math classes, and I found out that Kansas City, Kansas, was in such need of math and science teachers. They had like a transition to teaching program where they would pay for schooling and certification for math and science teachers in KCK if people agreed to teach for 4 years. And so I did that. I went through KU to get certified to teach. I taught math in KCK for 4 years. But then what happened, the cold hard truth is I started having children. And they were born close enough together that I was looking at childcare on an infant and a newborn. And without exaggeration, that was going to be half my salary to have to pay for childcare on an infant and a newborn. So my husband and I realized that we probably honestly would be better off me staying home rather than paying through the nose for childcare. So stayed home for a good handful of years raising my kids. And then in 20, I think the thing that changed the trajectory of my life the most was in 2016, Donald Trump got elected. And that really sort of shifted my perspective on the world in general. And I remember waking up after the election, kind of feeling like I heard a voice that said, it's my turn. And I took that to mean it was sort of my turn to step into the flow of history. Like growing up, I always heard stories about what it was like to be Black before 1964, like what it was like to grow up during the Civil Rights era. My family is a great set of storytellers. They always told stories about life in KCK as Black people. And so 2016 happened. I started just really, I started becoming a street protester, and because I thought, okay, it's my turn to participate in the movement, right, in the struggle. I've seen pictures of my mom in marching and protest, my grandfather's in protest, and so I'm like, all right, that's it. And then in 2017, I actually became involved with the Democratic Party as a precinct captain. So those are the people who are in charge with. Really, it comes down to voter education, but only talking to the Democrats in a very small geographic area. So I did that. And then in 2019, my House rep asked me to run for the Kansas State Senate. So I did that. I ran for Kansas State Senate, and I started that campaign in 2019, which meant that I was running for Kansas State Senate in 2020. I mean, just a few things happened in 2020. It was a small year news wise, but between the pandemic and like the George Floyd situation, watching the world turn around, I was running for office in the backdrop of that. So that was it. That was learned a lot, saw a lot. I lost that election in 2020, but it was very close. Only lost by 1,900 votes out of about 43,000 votes that were cast. And that got me on the governor's radar. She appointed me to be the executive director of the Kansas African American Affairs Commission. That's the job that I have right now, although we're not really here to talk about my job. That's separate. But so that's where on paper that office, my position functions as a liaison between the Black community and the governor's office. So it's not here's the thing I keep trying to say, it's not a part of the legislature. Like, we are not tied to the legislature. And so that's what I do, my day job. One of the things that I'm very passionate about in that day job, what I'd like to talk about with the audience, is civic engagement, and just to help our community understand the need to pay attention to, not just to pay attention to politics, like to watch TV and yell at the TV, or to say screw that, but to actually figure out ways to get involved, because I think we actually have more power as a community than we give ourselves credit for. So that's kind of the upshot right now. I mean, I know you'll ask me about, because I am running for office again, running for the Kansas State Senate again. It's a different district because they gerrymandered the lines, and so while I haven't physically moved my residence, the lines have shifted around me. So I'm in a different district. It was 9 last time; it's 23 this time. And gerrymandering, that's a whole. I mean, that's part of it also. So it's just one of the things I'm really finding myself more passionate about is trying to help our community understand how to get civically involved. And it doesn't always mean running for office, right? There's a lot of different things where people can do for civic engagement, and then voting, because sometimes turnout in our community is very low.
So we talked about a host of different subjects.
You took me back to kindergarten, man. You
Yes,
said
yeah, but now we finished. Now you all grown, and 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 you got this experience, and you know I'm I hate to use these words. I'm a chronic bitcher about what's going on in our community. And we had some like-minded conversations. Just touch on a few things that you think that we as people of color should be paying attention to, more attention to.
I do not think that Black people writ large understand the power that we could hold to make change in our community. I have heard time and time again in talking to people across the state, why should I vote? They don't care about me. They don't care about my issues. They don't know anything about me. And what I will say is that I truly believe if a politician thought that they were going to lose their election unless they paid attention to Black people, they would pay attention. If they really thought that their job was at stake, if Black people showed up, they would surely pay attention to Black people. Politicians are wonderful for showing up at a Black church 6 weeks ahead of an election. They say all kinds of things and then they disappear, because they know that maybe the Black people will vote and that maybe the Black people will hold them accountable. But if they were really afraid that they were going to lose, they would pay attention.
All right. So now I'm doing my plug, my own selfish plug with block voting and group economics. And you hit the point of that I'm trying to emphasize with block voting, that if you are voting as a block, that's one thing, but having the politician or your representative understanding very clearly that you're giving them a mandate once they get in office, these are the things you're looking for them to solve. And if they don't solve them, that block will not be voting for them. And I think just having voter registration and all of that, you need that, but you need a specific plan for your politicians and your administrators to follow, that is going to help you get a seat at the table.
Right. Now, I don't know. I mean, I think with my advocacy and my focus is almost like not that far along the line, right? You're talking about if people are registered and ready to vote, then the next step would be block voting. I'm almost at the step that comes before that, right? Because I think I there is great power. I see you. There's great power in block voting, but I know what's the phrase? Not all skin folk are kinfolk. So this idea of just voting one way because we're Black, I'm not sure that's I'm not sure. I still am more. I'm one step ahead of that. Like I think when you talk about block voting, that's one step further along the line, where it's like once you get people registered and with the mindset of, oh, I should vote, then the conversation is where you pick up of, let's see how we can get together and have some sort of agreement on the topic. Let's see if we can get together and find a candidate that helps us with what we think. So if I understand block voting correctly,
Well,
I'm
you
even at this.
understand it correctly, but not in the same context. It's like I was just got to finish interviewing retired General Gordon Bray, and we, we we were talking about this. I'm saying there's really, from what I see, there's no real plan that encompasses our leadership in our community. Every community has leaders. And block voting works for the Irish, the Chinese, and group economics. Those groups, they practice, Middle Easterners practice doing business with Middle Easterners.
Right.
All right, so when you start talking about bringing your community together, it's not about inclusion with everybody else. It's about, we are, from my perspective, we're the lowest thing on the totem pole economically and everything, and we built this country. We were here before this was a nation, and but information applied is power, and if you don't have the information, you're not going to be looking at the situation clearly. Just the vote is one thing, but to vote and know that you're voting together, and the people that you're voting for know that their livelihood in that profession depends on them performing.
I think again, I still think I understand what you said. I still think I'm perhaps one step before that, because the idea of, when I talk about civic engagement or paying attention to what's going on civically, I really would like to see more of our community, even as individuals, know what's going on to the point where they could come together and make a good decision on who to vote for block voting
Right,
wise.
right.
Do you know what I mean? Because I know I hear a lot of complaints about various governments, because I'm at the state level, and various municipal governments around the state. Like, a lot of people are upset about their governments, but I'm like, okay. I try to tell people, okay, well, if you're unhappy with the government, are you trying to find other ways to be involved to make some sort of influence? Like, for example, not everyone wants to run for office. That's a special breed of crazy. Okay, it's just to run for office. But I think a lot of areas would be beneficial if there were Black people who were involved in, if it's with a campaign, if it's who are involved in social media, right? Like, to what you do. You own your own social media and media digital, and so you have a worldview that I think is helpful. I think if there were more Black people involved in various boards and commissions, that's not necessarily running for office. That's not necessarily even being elected, but like at the state level, there's boards and commissions, and some of those boards actually impact policies that potentially would have an impact on our community. So I believe that civic engagement and getting involved and paying attention to how to better our community can be done in a lot of different ways. But voting is definitely quite powerful. And I believe very strongly that if we don't like the people who are representing us, then we should get educated about why we don't like them, and then who potentially we might want instead. That's one way. But then, like I said, there's boards and commissions. There's just being involved. Quite frankly, a lot of it, and you probably would know this as well, is just showing up. So if there's a school board meeting, or if there's a city council meeting, or if there's some sort of meeting of your local government, showing up and paying attention, because that's when you find out the minutia of various topics that may pertain to our lives in various ways. Like right before we got on this call, right? I was running late to this call, So I was watching a committee hearing, right? And as you and I, that's our bread and butter. You and I will sit and we'll watch it. We'll watch a committee hearing. We'll watch a 2-hour committee hearing in all of its dry detail. And we are a rare breed because there are not a lot of people who will sit and watch a committee. Quite frankly, I think I knew I was made out for this because do you remember when Oliver North and the Iran Contra hearings were going on?
Remember everything about them.
I watched I watched that hearing. It was summer and I was at my grandparents' house. And I remember I just sat there and I was a teenager at that point, maybe eighth grade, ninth grade, something like that. I even as a teenager sat there and watched that entire hearing and developed my own opinions about whether or not I thought Oliver North was guilty. So I think it's a rare breed of people who want to do that. But I would really love to see our community just get involved and pay attention in ways that sometimes I'm not sure. First of all, people, I think just white, black, in anything. I think people don't necessarily want to pay attention to politics right now. Politics it leaves a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths. So a lot of people don't want to pay attention to politics. But I think for our community in particular, I would love to have more people paying attention.
Yeah, well, what I'm interested in here at Cascade Media, I'm only interested in things that can change laws and policies. And I'm saying policies in our school districts, in the workplace in general, and change the laws. And who you give your money to is who you give your power to. Hence, block voting and group economics. And when you can come together as a group, not to say we're going to do this, and this, but on two simple things that we know if we vote together, that has an impact. We know if we spend our money together, that has an impact. Now, what kind of impact you want it to have and all of that, that's to be determined. And I think when I'm pitching block voting and group economics, people be putting the cart before the horse or the chicken before the egg. All I'm saying is these two things will give you results. Do you agree on that or not? And if you agree that they will give you results, well, how do we achieve bringing that about? And the only way you can achieve uh, doing what we're advocating is through digital communications. There's only one company that is already situated to provide those services to our community, and that's Cascade Media Group. And any other thing that you're talking about, whether it's politics, it really has no weight with me, because if you can't change the law and you can't change your environment, and in America, we live in a democracy, but it's capitalism. And one thing I learned from the moms 10, 15 years ago when McDonald's and all these fast food people were frying the French fries in saturated fat, they said, we ain't spending our money until you change that. Everybody changed up because they said, we can't afford to lose that business. And I think we have to marshal our resources and use them in the same way. You're not going to get our vote unless it's a transactional relationship, basically. And that's what America understands. That's what politics is about. And I think information applied is power. And you cannot get the information if it's coming to you skewered. And when you come to Cascade Media Group, you don't see us saying black anything. You see conversations around subjects and things that affect our community.
Okay.
So I'm like, and so when I say that is to say, and why you do what you do, like you say, listening to this information and these hearings, because they have relevance. And if you understand what that relevance is, then you might be able to influence some people that a change can come about.
And I think for myself, where I've chosen to, because it may be a leap to take someone who's not paying attention to politics at all to say, I want you to sit down and watch this committee hearing on a confirmation. That's a bit much. And so I think there is a fairly low bar to clear just to try to convince people of the importance of voting. I was literally on a sidewalk a couple of weeks ago. I had an event and I was picking up some signs that were out, and a Black man walked by and he's like, "What's the sign for?" And I was talking to him about it. And he was in his 40s, Black man in his 40s. And I was talking about the upcoming election. He's like, "Oh, I don't vote." And I was like, "Well, why?" Right? I mean, and he said other things like, here's the thing, it wasn't even that, it wasn't the line of, oh, they don't care about me, but he had a lot of, his life was going on, right? And he would tell me a story and I'm like, man, I believe everything, I believe every word coming out of your mouth about the obstacles that are facing you. And I think that because a lot of people are in that situation where life is happening and they think, I don't have the time to vote, or I don't need to vote, or why should I vote? Because life is happening, like real life is happening. But I also then I think about some of the policies that are enacted at various levels, be that the federal level, the state level, the city level, right? That do impact our day-to-day lives, that he would potentially have a voice in if he voted. And I know that was one gentleman that I talked to, and I just know that that story is repeated over and over and over and over and over again in our community, where because life is happening, people have lives that are going on, and there's lots of things going on, good and bad, right? I just got married, I just had a baby, I just moved new houses, I just got a new job. It doesn't always have to be doom and gloom. I think sometimes with our community we might think, oh, I just got out of jail, I just, got arrested. But like, it's like just life. People have life happening, and sometimes it slips past them to pay attention to policies that actually do impact our lives as well.
So on closing, why don't you get you a shameless plug in for you running for the Senate? Tell our people a little bit about that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I am running for the Kansas
And
State
tell them
Senate, and
where they can send some money and some support. I'm like, that's what I got you on here for.
Google, if you Google me, right,
Let them know.
staceynoel.com. And I think more so than that, it's here's honestly, yes, I'm running for honest. I'm running for office, and I do think it's important for me to win for any number of reasons. Now, I do not live in a Black area, right? So me winning is not going to have an impact on certain zip codes in Sedgwick County, right? It's not going to impact certain zip codes in Topeka. It's not going to impact certain zip codes in Wyandotte County, where I know there might be a more of a concentration of Black people. Where I live, my zip code is not predominantly African American. So for me to get elected based on this idea of who are the people that I would be representing, it would not by and large be the Black community. My area is not necessarily heavily.
This is brought to you by Kansas City Business Association, working to improve our community.